Hi everyone, let's build a Warmoth Tele. In this segment we'll be laying out the wiring harness. First we're going to mask off the area where we'll be soldering. We don't want to have to come back through and try and do that after we've gotten the wiring run. As you can see, we're using paper towels. I've doubled up on them, and they are the quality paper towels. If you're using the bargain basement single ply kind, you may want to use 4 layers. This step is going to prevent the wood from getting scorched if we drop some hot solder on it or spill rosin on it. It's also going to protect it if we accidentally drop something on the face of the guitar while we're working. And once you've got that protective layer down, we'll go ahead and get the wiring laid out. The leads on the right are from the neck pickup. Of course, you can get it a schematic online, but sometimes it's helpful to see exactly where the leads go when you're looking at it. The black wires are the grounds. We're going to ground those together on the back of one of these potentiometers here. And the yellow lead is, of course, the bridge pickup. You can see where that's connected on the switch there at the right. I like to make a mechanical connection here, very gently make a bend in the end of the wires as you put it through the switch. That way it doesn't pop out quite as readily. In this case we'll be using a standard PVC jacket wire. We'll cut it to length and use our wire strippers to remove the jacket. You may be using a vintage correct cloth pullback wire. That's actually easier to use. You just cut it to length and pull back the covering. No stripping required. Alright, we'll get our first wire laid here, going from the output of the switch to the volume pot. And then on over to the tone pot as well. And we are wiring this Tele in a more standard bridge and neck layout. On the volume pot, we're going to go ahead and bend up one of the tabs, the opposing tab. That will be our ground. And the center tab here will be the output. That's going to go to the output jack. The ground on the output jack will be on the back of one of the potentiometers. And these little almost loops of wire we're making here to connect the different nodes on the switch are going to face down. Once it's installed, they'll be facing upwards towards the control plate to keep them out of the way. for these segments, I'm going more for visibility and information than a pretty wiring result. I already expect to change these potentiometers to some mojo tone pots. As long as you're getting a good, stable, solid wiring connection, your harness doesn't need to win any beauty contests. It's going to be locked up inside your guitar after all. Hopefully you'll be playing it. We've got a lot of grounds all on one lug here. They're also going to be soldered, again to the back of the potentiometer. But it's really going to help us if we get them all to where they hold themselves in place before we start the soldering. And here's where our output leads will go. As you see, this longer piece of metal here is the one that connects to the tip of the guitar cable, so that's going to be our hot lead. You can follow it around on the side till you get to that tab. Make sure you have it right. We'll go ahead and braid this wiring as well, so we have as much shielding as possible. Now, when you're setting up the wiring on this jack, it's tempting to want to go from the inside, but that's going to create trouble when you try to plug a jack into it later. So you want to have all the wiring coming from the outside, as shown, and you want to approach it from the top, so the wire itself rests down on the tab and kind of keeps itself out of the way, as you can see here. That way, when you straighten it out, it's going to have no problem going into the guitar, but it's also not going to keep your plug from going in. And finally, the peskiest little jumper here. Sometimes with these crowded terminals, it helps if you twist the wire and then turn the wire the same way that you twisted it. Almost screw it into place. Now you'll have to be careful if you get any extraneous wires touching contacts here or there. You got to go back in, clean those up, and cut them off. Or at the very least, mash them back into an ugly little pile so they're not shorting out your switch. And here's a quick look at the salvaged capacitor we'll be using. You'll most certainly be using a brand new capacitor, which would be easier. In fact, the leads on this one are just barely long enough to get away with it. If you haven't been soldering for a while, I would recommend you don't even attempt this. It's basically the bare minimum that I would attempt to solder onto the back of a pot. This is a 0.047 UF capacitor. Gives you a nice almost wah sound when you work the tone knob back and forth. That's not going to stay on there as it is, but you can see where it'll be when we're done. Don't get carried away spending a lot of money on these caps. Most of your favored vintage recordings had just an old ceramic capacitor in there. You had to spend $50 on a paper and oil or whatever. But if you want to, if you think it sounds better, then, knock yourself out. I'm certainly not knocking it. Alright, looks like we've got everything laid out pretty well here. It's going to make things a lot easier when we go to get started soldering. As a matter of fact, we'll be soldering the wiring harness up next. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.